If I could have everybody's attention, please. We have no officers on the Planning Commission that are present today, but we do have a quorum, and we need somebody to lead the meeting, so we've asked Matt to be our chairman today. If that's okay with everybody, we'll let him proceed.
Thanks, Doug. Welcome to the April 15th meeting of the Mobile City Planning Commission. I'd like to take a moment to review our general operating procedures. The meeting is divided into two sessions, public hearing and deliberation. In the public hearing session, applications or group applications on the agenda are called. The applicants can make their presentations. Commission members may ask questions during this part, and members of the public can make their comments. Only 4 people may speak for or against agenda items. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes, subject to questions by the commission. After 4 minutes, allowed people indicate 1 minute left to speak, and at this point, please summarize your comments. After all opposition speakers have finished, the applicant will be given time to respond. If you do intend to speak, please come to the podium, speak into the microphone, and give your name and address for our minutes. Please direct all comments to the commission only and not the applicant or the audience, and please remember to speak directly into the microphone. On routine applications, the applicant may simply raise his or her hand if there are no objections to staff recommendations. I will then
Slow down,
announce-
Matt. Slow down. You're reading too fast.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay, great. On routine applications, the applicant may simply raise his or her hand if there are no objections to the staff recommendations. I will then announce that the applicant is in full agreement with those recommendations. If there are any questions, the applicant will be given an opportunity to respond. After hearing all applications, the commission will go into deliberation. In the deliberation session, the commissioners discuss each application with input from the staff as necessary, but with no input from the audience. The commissioners then vote on each application, and results of the voting can be learned from the planning department at 208-5895. If some issues arise during the deliberation session that were not addressed in the public hearing, the chairman has the discretion either to allow additional comments pertaining to those issues in order to resolve them, or call for the application to be held over for discussion at a future meeting. Occasionally, 1 or more commission members may recuse themselves from discussing and voting on a given application. A recusal does not necessarily mean the member is directly involved with the application or the applicant. Depending on the circumstances, ethical rules may require a recusal when there is only the slightest appearance of a conflict of interest. If a regular member recuses, a supernumerary will vote in their stead. The Planning Commission makes final decisions subject to appeal on subdivisions, planning approvals, and planned unit developments. The Planning Commission only makes recommendations on zoning applications, with the City Council making the final decision. Please remember to turn off your cell phones and other electronic devices at this time. And commissioners and staff, please remember to turn on your microphones when speaking. We'll now do roll call. Carlos is not here, Liba is not here, Jennifer's not here. Cart Blackwell. Present. Shirley Sessions is not here. Alan Cameron. Taylor Atchison.
Here.
Nick Amberger.
Here.
Bess Rich.
Here.
Don Hembry.
Here.
Jay Stubbs.
Here.
I believe we have a quorum. First on our agenda, we have the adoption of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda is adopted. The next item on our agenda is the Rada Investments LLC planning approval request, 755 Monroe Street. Taylor has recused himself. Lacey Smith, could you give us your address as well, please?
My business address is 11 North Tower,
You're speaking. Okay, great.
It just concerns the planning approval for the T5 property at 755 Monroe Street, which is for commonly known as Icebox. This was held over to the March meeting where an earlier version of the site plan was submitted and discussed, and that was some comments and concerns, particularly for some adjacent neighbors surrounding the property. As stated in the revised narrative that we've submitted prior to this meeting, Icebox leadership has met with those neighbors and has already implemented some measures to address some of their concerns regarding litter, parking, and noise from the property. With me is Stoney Boatman, who is the manager of the Icebox, and he can speak further to some of those efforts, but I just want to review with you the differences between the previously submitted plan and the revised plan that's up for your consideration. A primary component of the site plan that we've submitted is an increase beyond the 100% occupancy limit for T51 properties, and that's related to a redevelopment of a two-story pre-existing building that's immediately behind the bar as it currently exists. One aspect that we did want to correct from the March meeting is concerns the play yard or the Icebox yard. It seems that was misunderstood as an expansion of what is currently there. There is, kind of a side yard towards the front of the bar where there's some swings and shade structures and whatnot. And there is no plan at this time to expand the yard or make it bigger. Most of those features, like I said, already exist, and we just want to be very clear that there's no plan to expand into this. Particularly, you see on the site plan above, there's an empty yard up to the right on the east side of the property, and I believe the neighbors were concerned that there would be further games and activity in that side of the property, and there's no current plan affecting that yard. So the only addition or change as to the yard as it currently exists is the addition of a 10-foot wooden fence that's marked up there, and that is intended to be a noise control measure between the Icebox and its residential neighbors that are immediately adjacent. And I'll discuss that fence a little more in a minute. But the second component is, like I said, the redevelopment of the two-story facility. The plan that was under consideration during the March meeting set forth plans for a commissary kitchen. That has been withdrawn. So that's Icebox is no longer asking for approval to put a kitchen. That space will instead be used for office and retail. But as shown in the site plan above, the primary intent for that indoor two-story space is to redevelop it into an indoor golf facility. There will be 3 large hitting bays, and that's intended to actually bring more of the clients indoors to the interior of the building and pull them out of the yard, but it complements the existing business of the Icebox. So the request for increased occupancy is related to the interior redevelopment and not anything in the yard. Some of the concerns that were addressed in both the staff report and by the neighbors, one would be the fence. We are aware that the downtown district ordinances limit fences to 8 feet, excuse me, and the site plan currently puts it at 10 feet. Again, that's intended to be, a further noise barrier. I've got photos of the fence if anybody wants, or the intended design for the fence, if anyone wants to see it. And this is more of a architectural concern, but it will be painted, perhaps ivy grown on it, so we don't believe it'll be an eyesore. We do think it'll help address some of the neighbors' concerns about the noise in the yard. As to those noise concerns, Icebox is in compliance with Mobile's noise ordinance. It's never been cited for any noise ordinance violation, and Icebox management and their staff, they actively monitor the noise levels at the bar at all times. Stoney can speak to that a little further, but they monitor the decibel outputs.
1 minute.
And they do all that in an effort to be a good neighbor. In terms of the parking, T51 buildings are not required to provide parking, but Icebox is actively working with the Mobile Police Department to for anybody to park in proper areas, and they are hoping to. They also are in discussions with the Benedict Library to perhaps expand parking into that parking lot. And then finally, they've hired a litter crew to pick up both the Icebox property and the surrounding areas on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then Stoney and staff
Thank you, ma'am. Do any of the commissioners have questions for the applicant?
I have a question. I didn't catch your name at the very beginning. And you're a resident of the area?
I am not, I'm an attorney.
Attorney, okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Thank you. You mentioned about retail space. I might have misunderstood, but could you explain what that is, what you're planning?
So, the March plan had plans for a commissary kitchen that's been, retracted, that will be the office and retail space. So, they currently have a small office space in, the bar as it exists now, that small space will be moved to this, the office and retail space.
But you're not doing a retail space.
Not presently. I mean, it's non-continuing, it's currently, intended to be primarily office, space.
Hi, I'm Stoney Bowman, 755 Monroe Street.
Hold on just a moment. Does anybody have any other questions for the applicant? No, you're okay. You're okay. Just making sure. Okay. Yeah, next speaker.
To help understand about the retail space,
Sure.
what it is, like she was saying, we had planned to look at a commissary kitchen, we retracted that idea, and really we're just gonna take that away. It's not gonna be connected to our bar at all. We'll have an outdoor door to the outside area, and there's no real plan of anybody moving in at the moment, but it's something we can offer to generate, further income for our large establishment that we have. And like I said, it is a future idea, it's something that, it won't be a heavily parking area or anything like that. If anything, it might be just like somebody using it as like their own little shop or something. So just a different way of, trying to utilize the space and not generate that much more traffic or anything. And it would also help dampen the noise from the bar to the neighbors and stuff like that.
Okay, got it. Sorry, Stoney, I thought you were starting your own time. All right. Yeah, understood. So does anyone else have further questions for the applicant?
I guess I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, Bess, will you turn your mic on?
Can you hear now? Okay. On the 10-foot privacy fence, I think that would take a Board of Adjustment. So you're aware of that? Make an applicant, okay. Because the commission wouldn't be able to do that. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't, okay. Thank you.
All right, any further questions? All right, seeing none, we can move on to the next speaker. Are there any other speakers for this application? All right, y'all can go ahead and take a seat. Are there any speakers against?
Is this for opposition
It is now.
now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I live there on Monroe Street at 715.
Could we get your name and address, ma'am?
It's Paulette Walsh, 715 Monroe Street.
Thank you.
My driveway is, I guess, next door to the backyard of the Icebox Bar. And my neighbors and I have been commenting through email to Councilman Manzi and to the Planning Commission, and met with the Taylor and Stoney, and our concerns are this: parking. That's a really big issue. We're already having a, can you hear me? We're already
Yes,
having an
ma'am.
issue with the number of patrons they have now, parking very close to our driveways, across from our driveways, in front of the fire hydrants, ignoring parking, no parking signs at this capacity. If the 100 additional patrons are allowed to come, then that's just going to magnify the parking issue. Plus, we're not real sure about the food trucks, what kind of an issue that's going to cause for increased parking needs. We're also concerned about the noise level. I know when we met with them, they said that they had lowered the height of the speakers to try and address some of that noise. And at that time of the meeting, they said they were not going to increase the size of the adult play yard, which it looks to me, when I'm peeping over the fence, that it has indeed been increased, even though I thought they said they weren't going to try and address the increase in noise. We have issues with the patrons trespassing on our property, and please excuse the grossness, going to the bathroom on our property, and coming out of the bar inebriated, using coarse language, loud language, and this is just as an example. When they're in the play yard, whether they win or they lose at cornhole, they're very loud about the outcome of the game. So noise is a big issue for us. Trash is another issue, and we're concerned about how is that commissary kitchen and those food trucks going to address the additional trash in regards to rodent control, roach control, pest control, those issues, additional cats, coons, whatever, animals that come and like garbage. So we're concerned about that. And I guess to summarize, it's parking, which is a huge issue. We can't, our driveways are so narrow. If somebody parks across the street from my driveway in front of my neighbor's house, and then additionally parks in front or near my driveway, or in front of my home and near my driveway, I can't get in or out of my driveway. And it's the same holds true for all of us in the neighborhood, because the driveways are very narrow, and the street is, and when you're trying to accommodate backing in and backing out, pulling in. So parking is a huge issue. Noise is a very huge issue. Trash, unruly, loud, obnoxious patrons, and we just don't understand, because of the unknown, what all that additional business is going to cause. And one thing that was mentioned in the meeting that we had with Taylor and Stoney was they said they would not do this, but they could do this. They could classify the building area where the new golf entertainment is going to be as a separate business, which would then just give them that 100 additional capacity. So we're a little unsure about how that would work. So in summary, parking, noise, trash, trespassing, and rodent insect control with the addition of the food.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anyone have any questions for the speaker? Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else to speak in opposition to this? Yeah, we'll have the opposition finish their speaking, and then we'll have Elizabeth. Anyone else to speak in opposition? All right, go ahead, Elizabeth.
So my name is Elizabeth Stevens. I'm director of the downtown. Oh, I'm sorry. Elizabeth Stevens, director of the Downtown Mobile Alliance. Can you hear now? Okay. We recently commissioned a city downtown-wide study of all the streets and how to design the streets and manage the streets downtown. And one of the ideas behind that was kind of driving the study was, how do we make the streets feel safe and encouraging of traditional urban development or walkable urbanism. So we hired a fellow named Jeff Speck who did this study, and it's called Optimizing the Streets. And it's on our website, downtownmobile.org. It's right on the front. You can watch the presentation and download the report. And one of the things that is talked about a lot is this issue of, what is the right amount of parking on a street, and how do we manage it, and how does it change from this place to that? One of the things he talks about is what's called a yield street or a slow flow street. And that would be, an example of that would be Cedar, Warren, Dearborn, south of Church Street, in that neighborhood. I live in this neighborhood, but I also run the Downtown Mobile Alliance. And on those streets, people can park on either side. There's little enough, A, parking consistently, or B, cars driving back and forth to cause a problem. But what the parking does do is help slow people down, because people will kind of fly down those streets if there's no friction. But where you get into a situation where you might have continuous parking on one of these streets, then you really can't do two-way plus two parking. It's just not, the way a slow flow works is that there are enough gaps along there so that a car can kind of pull in and the other goes by and then everybody goes back along. So I don't know if you were able to get a copy of the memo. I know I sent it late, but explain some of this. You did, okay. So what might be considered would be not at 715, which is her site, which has a big fire hydrant right in the middle of it. It would be a great place to not allow parking there. But then starting alongside the commercial property, mark spaces all the way to the point. You could jockey. There's a lot of driveways in there, and I think that's going to take work, the city working with the property owners as to what driveways are needed, what can be abandoned for now, when where could their parking be. If you had it zigzag, that even is more effective a reducer of people driving too fast in the area. So there's no parking requirement for the development in downtown, except in a small district where all the office towers are. This downtown is always going to be messy, and it's always going to be very complicated at the block and even in this case at the parcel level. But I do think that there's an opportunity, in the pictures that Ms. Paulette submitted, there's a lot of boorish behavior going on around there. It's a lot of inconsiderate. I know that. I live near the Civic Center. There's a lot of boorish behavior that goes on in an urban environment. But we can manage that, and we have an obligation, I think, to try to make everybody's needs addressed. And so I just kind of threw out some possible options there. It's my understanding that along Canal Street, the city has marked the spaces all along there. And I think that kind of adding a little bit more management to the area might help. I also think making everything east of the subject site on Monroe and Scott residential only will also send the message to business patrons that's not the area. But that's just kind of a quick thought on how that section might be managed so that it's not quite as annoying to the neighbors. I know even personally I've tried to walk to the grocery store and the cars parked all over the sidewalk, and so I think we can manage it a little bit so that it's a little bit more positive for the neighbors.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the Downtown Mobile Alliance?
I do.
Who does? Oh, no, ma'am. No, ma'am. Commissioners.
Sorry.
All right. You can go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Bess.
When you talk about managing the parking, you're saying the city, because they're public streets, would be responsible for coming up with a parking plan by striping it for the locations of parking. Can this commission require that? I don't know. To also meet that need?
No, I do not think so. The only time I'm aware that that was a requirement was when the Hank Blue Brewery across the street was being appealed in circuit court, and the judge allowed the variance. Now, I believe it was the court and not the city that required that the property owner pay the city to pave it, to paint the
Stripes.
parallel parking spaces. I think that was the court that did that and not this commission. I don't think that we can obligate the city to pay for anything. We could probably, I think we could probably ask or require the owner to work with the city in creating these off-site, on-street parking spaces.
I would hope that the city, in the interest of
Well, that's what
of-
that's why I didn't know whether it could be one of the recommendations.
Yeah, I don't know.
Depending on how we ask it.
Parking's not required down there.
Yeah.
We can't force it on them because the code does not require that. So we can't place that condition on them, but we can, I guess, request that they work with the traffic engineering department to help alleviate the situation. But the code does not require any parking.
Yet this advertises outside of the district for people to come. I mean, it's a business, so we know that people are going to come in cars. They're not all going to walk, even though that's,
Well,
a
and
game plan.
that's the way it is in the entire DDD. I mean, Dolphin Street,
Right. No, I
St. Louis,
understand.
it's, that's
But
the
they're
nature of the
upping
beast.
the number of people. That's what we're dealing with, so that means more cars. But, okay.
Well, I would say that the whole idea behind the 100-person above requiring planning commission was to provide a forum like this where the different parties could come together, so that somebody didn't wake up one day and they had a 500-person bar next door. And so that is kind of, we've created in the
Sure.
code this process so that everybody could hear one another and understand what everybody's challenges are. And hopefully the city could be that kind of grown-up in the room that
Right.
figures it out for everybody.
Right, to help mitigate.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what we were capable as a commission on that.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Does anyone else have any questions for Elizabeth? All right, Elizabeth, thanks so much.
Thank you.
The applicant now has an opportunity to respond.
Again, I'm Lacey Smith. Several points that we would like to address. First, to be clear, we are aware of the 10-foot fence being slightly out of the limitation. We would ask the architectural
Excuse me,
board.
ma'am, I can't hear you.
So we are aware of the proposed 10-foot fence being slightly out of conformance with the DDD ordinances, and we do intend to seek approval for that 10-foot fence. But in the event that is not approved, by right, we could still build an 8-foot fence in that location, which would still provide noise reduction and to address some of the concerns that are still raised here today. As far as parking is concerned, we agreed that we, again, as a T51, the Icebox is not required to provide parking, but the owner is open to doing some of the striping just discussed by the Downtown Alliance pursuant to the right-of-way agreement that is currently in place. Another point of clarification is that the March site plan that was previously proposed versus the one that we're discussing today actually shows a reduction in the size of the Icebox yard or the play yard. And again, some of the noisier games have been moved to address the concerns from neighbors, so there's not all this hooping and hollering related to patrons using that area. Another point of clarification, just again, the kitchen that was proposed the last meeting, that is not envisioned in this plan. In terms of any trash or litter that might be generated from any food trucks that are occasionally on site, again, the staff is actively addressing trash every day, whether it's during the weekday with Stoney and others picking up the surrounding area as well as the property, or they've taken the additional step of hiring an independent contractor to do that for them after the big weekend crowds. The noise, I believe that what we discussed today shows that the Icebox is making every reasonable effort to reduce the noise with a large fence. They've moved the noisy games. They're monitoring it, and all of that shows that they have not had any noise violations. They've never been cited for that. So we understand the concerns of our residential neighbors wanting to have, it be, as quiet as possible, but it wouldn't be an entertainment district if the standard was no noise. So the Icebox is in compliance with that, and they're making their best efforts to be a good neighbor. And again, we think that increased capacity is consistent with what the DDD was envisioned as, and I'll just ask Stoney if he has anything further to add.
Yeah, if I may, just to to clarify again, the commissary kitchen is not going to happen. So as far as any extra trash or rodents or like that, that's not even going to be an issue. We have reduced the size of the yard, and me as a manager, I've made a very good point, and there's a note on my bar for my staff that they know at 10:30 at night they turn the outside speakers down very low, if not all the way down. So the horseshoes and the cornhole that I know generated noise, they've been pulled up now for a month. So we got rid of those immediately to help, with that noise situation. So again, I just want to we're doing everything we can, and we'll definitely be happy to, to work with the city and paint the stripes for any of the parking issues as well.
Great, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, that wraps up the comment section on this, unless someone has further questions for the applicant. Okay, we're going to move on to our next item. Next item is Big River Partners Feeder Spring subdivision application. This item is being withdrawn. Is that correct?
Yeah, Casey Pipes for the applicant. We're withdrawing the applications.
Thank you, Casey. Do we need to open for public comment since it was on the agenda? Okay, we're not going to take comments on that then. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Next item is BRPC Holdings PUD application 3703 Old Shell Road. Is the applicant present?
Good afternoon, Andrew Prescott, 41 West I-65 Service Road North. The plans for the building have been approved. We're waiting to pull that permit, and also the site plan, or the civil plans are in for review. We're waiting to pull that permit as soon as it's approved.
Great. Are there any questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir. I would entertain a motion to extend the application. Do we have a particular date?
Deliberations.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm used to Zooming still. Yeah. All right. Next item on the agenda is Lewis Home Place subdivision. Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with staff recommendations? All right. Are there any other speakers in opposition to this application? I was asking if there were any yeah. So none present in opposition. Let's see here. Number 5 is Wildwood Glen subdivision application. Is the applicant present?
Jerry Bird, Bird Surveying Company for the owner. We're okay except for condition 9, which is a little unusual as far as flag lots. There's a 6-acre lot to the rear of the flag lots. It's the orientation of the houses. Staff has recommended a 25-foot building setback that would go this way on each lot, and we would like it to be along like a street where the driveway is. We would like to offset 25 feet back from the property line and then build a house back there. The two houses would be built face to face in the rear with access coming off the street out here.
So Jerry, what are you asking for? You're asking for the 25-foot setback to be
Reoriented.
Be oriented like I showed on the preliminary plat.
Does staff have an issue with that?
No, sir, we do not. Typically what happens with a flag lot is it kind of, the setback is typically notched right here. It'll be notched right here on the flag.
because all three of these flag lots, Lot 3, 4, and 7, which is a very large lot, are going to be sharing one curb cut to serve Lot 7. Mr. Bird's asking that the 25-foot setback line simply parallel those flags on lots 3 and 4. The same setbacks that you would have for interior properties would still apply where Lot 4 adjoins Lot 5 and 6, and then where Lot 3 adjoins Lot 1 and 2. So again, staff does not have any objection to the setback line running parallel to that common driveway on lots 3 and 4.
So we just changed the wording so it runs parallel to driveway on lots 3 and 4.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Correct. We had that'd be easier. The attorney
was that now?
simplified it.
What he wants is what's included in the staff report as shown on the overhead. So just remove the condition,
Number 9.
what was it, number 9?
Number
No.
9.
Yeah, just remove it and approve it as submitted.
Okay, it's easy enough.
Thanks, y'all. Mr. Byrd, do you have anything else?
Nothing else. That's all.
All right, thank you. Number 6, Henry Hamilton's application for 2339 Dolphin Island Parkway. Is the applicant present? Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Could you please
Yeah.
provide your name and your address, please?
Henry Hamilton, 2339 Dolphin Island Parkway. I could just want to thank the staff for the recommendation for approval and that we will meet all the compliance and the municipal codes and ordinance that's required for us. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Does any of the commissioners have questions for Mr.
I
Hamilton?
was having a hard time hearing. Is he in agreement with the recommendations?
He is.
Okay.
All right. All right, our next item is...
No, we got opposition speakers.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you, sir. Our opposition speaker is leaving, or is somebody else coming?
I was waiting for the call.
Gotcha.
Hi, I'm Debbie Foster, representing the Peninsula of Mobile, a nonprofit organization. The address is 4507 Park Road, 36605. I have some handouts that have been given to you just to highlight some. The Peninsula of Mobile is opposed to the upzoning from an R1 to a B3. We do not oppose upzoning, but not to the level of a B3. Reasons being that the B3 classification is inappropriate as there's other uses that would be much better suited for that site. The proposed use does not meet the B3 requirements as far as space is concerned. It's contrary to the Mobile Peninsula Corridor Master Plan. Upzoning will harm surrounding the community, the integrity of that community, and the community does not desire more such businesses. As the Commission is aware, the passage of version 5 of the UDC code last month designates the peninsula portion of Dolphin Island Parkway as a conservation district that has been done to help preserve the abundant natural resources in Mobile's only coastal community, as well as preserve the integrity of the nearly 12,000 residents of that community. The area in question was given a mixed commercial corridor designation in the flume. Mixed does not necessarily mean B3, however, and we are very concerned about B3 crawl into the neighborhoods just to the south. As you can see in both the staff's submitted site plan and the Planning Commission's own vicinity map, existing in Aerial 1, you can clearly see that this parcel is far from meeting the criteria set forth in B3 districts, community business districts, taken from the city's own definition that these districts are large, spacious, 60,000 square feet tossed around. The term less frequently used for goods such as clothing and automobiles. It also points to districts are actually developed to supply the business needs of the groups of the neighborhoods. Well, our neighborhoods and their residents have clearly said repeatedly, enough is enough with the car-related businesses. We currently have 12 existing businesses along a 5-mile stretch of waterlocked land. Exhibit A that I have given you shows the breakdown of those 12, as well as their zoning, as well as a map indicating where they are. Section 64.9 of the zoning ordinance calls on 4 reasons for such amendments as this to happen. Manifest error in the ordinance. This is not applicable to this case. Changing conditions in a particular area make a change necessary and desirable. Well, while our organization and the residents agree that R1 is inappropriate in that location, a B3 is definitely not desirable to the community at large. Another case cited is the need to increase the number of sites available to a business or industry. Again, this small waterlocked community currently has an overabundance of such businesses as what is proposed. And also, subdivision of the land into the building sites makes reclassification necessary. That's not applicable. I've given you pictures of what Mr. Hamilton's current site looks like, which I think is probably something we could think of what we would have. We have 12 of those right now. I've also given you the existing zoning map that shows the close proximity of neighborhoods that are already feeling a lot of pressure from the Brookley development. These people may be of low income. They deserve to stay in their neighborhoods and not have B3 pressure encroaching upon them. Also across the street is the Heron Landing subdivision, which are riverfront lots that as of today, 2 spec houses are starting to be constructed in there as soon as the privacy fence is done. So that, needless to say, is not an option. You will also see in there the Rosedale diagram that is taken from our corridor master plan, where this particular district, you'll notice, even has a crosswalk. This is to carry people or to safely lead them across this area to get over where within 2 blocks is a Crepe Myrtle bike trail and pedestrian trail. In other words, not a B3. This is an iconic structure of the 1960s. Our community has resoundingly said they would love to see other such uses, much less than what a B2 is, a B3, perhaps a B2, perhaps a B1, a transitional business, but not a B3 and not another car-related used car repair place. In closing, I just would like for you to also take a look at the floodway maps. This is right at the headwaters practically of Robinson Bayou, a lead feeder into the Dog River, as well as Payne and Willowdale Creeks are nearby. If anyone has any questions, I ask you to please check into this a little bit further. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Mr. Hamilton, did you want to respond? It looks like he might have left. Okay. Our next agenda item is Coca-Cola Mobile subdivision, PUD and subdivision request. Is the applicant present?
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Keith Watson. I'm from 5300 Coca-Cola Road. I'm the sales center manager of that site, and we do not oppose the recommendation of the commission, and just want to thank y'all for your consideration for our project. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other speakers for this application? Are there any in opposition to this application? Thank you. All right, that closes the public hearing portion of our meeting. We will now move on to a deliberation. So first we have the planning approval for the Rada Investments property at 755 Monroe Street.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, this is the history of this application. It's kind of been confusing back and forth a little bit. I asked Margaret some questions earlier, and she had a good explanation of what is triggering this application, so she's agreed to repeat that explanation for y'all's benefit if you need it.
Great, thank you.
As the commission is aware, certain activities in the DDD such as.
Could you get the microphone just a little closer?
Certain uses within the downtown development district, such as brew pubs, bars, lounges, venues, whenever those exceed an occupant load of 100, a planning approval is required. The application has been modified. The commissary kitchen has been removed, and where you can see office, retail, and storage is proposed. At this scale and level, the staff is not able to say, okay, those are separate uses. There's a firewall with no crisscross back and forth between the two. So staff calculated that area or included that occupant load for the entire site, which is 149, Bert, for the whole site. Thank you. This is consistent with how we have handled other applications in the DDD. We haven't had any applications where they've proposed to separate off a portion of the building. But so worst case scenario, as proposed in front of the commission, you're looking at a 149 person occupant load, and that includes the office retail area.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff?
You answered my question, because I know they can have up to 100 currently.
Yes, sir.
So we're talking about allowing them with this change to go up to 149 max.
Correct. And if, just for academic discussion, I believe without including the office retail area, the occupant load is 130. I'm sorry, 142 without the office retail area. I would suggest that if the commission does approve it, it is for the total occupant load for the site, so that there is no question in the future. I can also tell the commission that staff researched other planning approvals for occupant loads exceeding 100 within the DDD. And I'm sorry, I think I'm becoming redundant, but like the kitchen area, bathrooms, and all of that, that occupant load total was what the commission based their decision on.
Okay. And the applicant has, since our last meeting in March, they have changed their application, done away with the commissary kitchen, which is the outdoor kitchen area.
I don't believe it was outdoor, but it was the area of the building that in here. And so it was, close to residential. While it was inside, kitchens can be noisy. You have required exhaust fans, lots of trips to the dumpster and things of that nature. So they have eliminated the commissary kitchen.
Right. Well, that's helpful. I mean, the parking issue is something obviously that needs to be addressed, but I don't really see how we have the authority to require any kind of parking, because that's not part of the code. So that takes that off the table completely.
It is my understanding, and it was part of their application, and then it was also presented. They are actively working on pursuing an agreement with the Ben May Library, which is easy walking distance from the site. The library parking lot is right here. There's a gate directly to Monroe Street here. Okay. And then you have the site right there. The commission cannot require that, that parking agreement, but I do think the commission could encourage them to actively pursue it. Ultimately, it's the decision of a different body whether or not to formalize an agreement
Right.
for parking
Well,
there.
it makes sense that they would try to, as a business owner, they would try to pursue that because they're already maxed out with their parking at 100. So if they're going to bring in more customers, they've got to have places for them to park.
Correct, and then also too, you know, their hours of operation are not at odds. In general, the library is more during the day. This is, you know, weekends. While there may be some overlap on Saturdays, I've never seen the library parking lot at capacity.
Right.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
On the, they can have food trucks, and how does that play in as to where they would have to park? And is that's not part of their application either, but they would be free to do that. So we couldn't restrict that was not allowed, because they took away the interior kitchen, but technically have still a food venue by having
They
an agreement,
could,
whatever they do. The 149, does that take in, that's only what would be allowed interior, correct? So if they have a play space and food trucks,
Well,
there's no standard.
it becomes a little complicated because the occupant load is dictated and set out by the building code.
Mm-hmm.
You have these open areas outside, and when people have other ways to get to those open areas other than the building, it's difficult for building code to calculate
Right.
the
Yeah,
occupant
well, you
load.
can't keep those, there's no way you can count those numbers. I guess the question is, on planning approval, I know there's no code for downtown parking in the entertainment district, but when an applicant makes overtures, when the nearby residents have expressed concerns, we have talked about, like, no outdoor speakers after hours, even though there's no law or codes as planning approval. Same thing, we could say no bands outside set up and make that part of the planning approval. But you're saying we would not have any authority to say how they could possibly plan for, nearby parking, other than an agreement, but we couldn't hold them up if they didn't get the agreement.
Well, if you look at, every staff report has whether it's a PUD or a planning approval, it says what the code, how the code addresses this application. The planning approval examines the applicant's location, site plan with regard to transportation, parking and access, public utilities and facilities, traffic congestion and hazard, and to determine if the proposal is in harmony with the orderly and appropriate development of the district. So you can certainly take into consideration the traffic and parking issues. I mean, when the one on Dolphin Street, that big, large building that Buzz Jordan brought to us for planning approval for like 300 occupancy load, the discussion by y'all was the noise, the traffic, the outdoor congestion of the pedestrians. So I guess the best way to put it is the harmony within the neighborhood. Do you get to such a large degree of people, number of people, that it doesn't fit within the neighborhood? You cannot say we have to, he has to create parking, but you can take that into consideration.
Yeah, for mitigation, I would
Yeah,
think.
exactly.
Mitigation.
Yeah. I mean, he could, if this was denied and he came back in a month from now or whenever and said, yes, I've got a parking agreement with the library and they're going to let us use 50 parking spaces over there, that's going to change y'all's analysis dramatically, I would
Right.
assume.
Yeah. And we would be able to say, no, like, already we heard that outdoor speakers are turned off at 10:30. So that's something that could become part of. But because there are outdoor activities, the food trucks which we're aware of, and I guess the recreational outdoor space, you know there's gonna be more people on that site. I mean, that just makes sense. I guess they would have somebody at the door if there's only one way in and out, counting or communicating that, oh, we've maxed out on our liability for the number of people we could have. But they could have as many people on their property. And they're encouraging that. And I don't think that no one says that's a secret or necessarily a problem, but it's creating the energy that's creating the stress. Because we could say no outdoor activity would be allowed, and that'd be one less thing that people would congregate and play with. But that's not the intent of this applicant, and he's trying to diversify, and I get all that, and he wants to be successful. But it would be really great if they did have that parking agreement, in my opinion. It would be terrific.
What is the occupancy load for the old Hank Blue site, do we know? Now, the hot pounds?
It was the applicant claimed that it was less than 100.
Okay. And has an application come in for that site next door to it yet? Okay.
Is the applicant still present? Yeah, I have a question. So, what's the last communication you had with the Ben May Public Library?
I know that there have been several others in preliminary discussions. I'm not aware of the date of the last one. In the library, my understanding is that the Icebox has been more proactive in that, and it's been get some responses. So we can definitely redouble those efforts. I do believe that Icebox Ownership Management is showing every effort to continue those efforts. But they want this to happen. They want to be a neighbor. So redouble those efforts. And again, just as a reminder, the owner has offered to help with the bee striking of the streets.
Great.
Speaking along what Ms. Best was talking about earlier, I remember we had an application, I don't remember, it was a restaurant, I'm not sure which one it was, over closer to Royal Street, I believe, that we limited the outdoor time for amplified sound to, I think, 10 or 10:30, that we couldn't have amplified sound. They could sit outside and play a guitar or whatever, but no amplified sound. That might be something that we need to look at in this case and just have a cutoff time for outdoor amplified sound to be considerate of the neighbors. Right. So I think I'm assuming would the applicant be agreeable to that?
I would think they would definitely be agreeable to that. As we said earlier, they've already self-imposed restrictions where they have been turning off the outdoor space.
Perfect, great.
At 10. So, and again, our position is that we are within the board's ordinance, we're in compliance with that. But we do understand concerns and we're willing to, within reason.
I know the parking, the applicant's gonna be pretty much required to provide parking somehow, or he's not gonna get additional people coming to the business, so. Right. Right. Okay.
In terms of where they're always located, they usually pull up, there's a porch area that's designated on the drawing, the outdoor porch with the umbrellas. Yes. So basically pull up, you can almost see the parking space. I think it's right to the left
Our food trucks have to have commissaries in the city of Mobile, right? They have to have a commissary. And with the removal of the commissary, it's now making it not as attractive for 5 food trucks to show up at the same time, right? Because they don't have a commissary. Okay.
I don't think there was, I take that back. I think about a month ago I read where there was either approved or it was on your agenda that they had to be parked. Yeah, they couldn't, the outdoor generator had to be, muffled and I think it was approved. Yeah.
There was a radius.
There was a distance from brick and mortar restaurants, I believe, too.
So, staff, do we have any potential findings of fact drafted that we could use for this if we were to have a motion? Thank you, Margaret.
I believe that to have a food truck on site, the business has to have a health department permit as well, yeah. Not only just the food truck, but also the facility.
No, ma'am.
So, if, I got it, thank you, though. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, if I would add, based on the discussion, we would also recommend the inclusion in number 3, no use of outside speakers or any outdoor amplified sound after 10 p.m.
Great.
Yes, ma'am. We didn't set a date.
If there are no further deliberations, the chair would entertain a motion.
I'm sorry, one more question before we get to that
Sure.
point. This is maybe going out on a little bit of a limb, but the applicant has listed out they've listed out the things they've done to try to address the concerns regarding hiring someone to pick up litter, the noise, all these things that the applicant has listed in their revised application. Would it be possible to make these voluntary use restrictions as part of the application?
But incorporated them into these conditions, such as number 2, perimeter litter pickup Friday, Saturday, and Sunday mornings as outlined,
Okay.
with additional pickup by the applicant as needed, the no use of the outdoor speakers, and then we would add, or any outdoor amplified sound. Number 7 is the 10-foot fence where the site adjoins residential and if granted a variance. So what the staff tried to do in developing these conditions is incorporate the narrative and the site plan elements that the applicant presented.
Since we just got these, I didn't see it, so that's great, it's perfect.
That's okay, you just received it.
Okay.
All right, any further deliberations? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Move to, findings of facts. Okay. Second.
All right, the motion has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
What about the outside activity on the recreation area? Is that gonna be limited to a certain hour?
Staff did not incorporate that into the conditions because it was not something that the applicant had included. I believe that is within the commission's purview.
It is. They're allowed by right to do what they're doing now, which is to have 100 people. They're going to have people that have been overserved on the premises, walking down the street. They can have outdoor activities now. I'm not sure if you increase it to 150, you're gonna have people outside, whether they're activities or not. I mean, they've got outdoor, I've been there one time with my wife. I was the oldest person there. They have outdoor tables, picnic tables, so you're gonna have people outside regardless. So I'm not sure the activities really create or attract that more people outside or create that much noise, more noise than what they're legally allowed to have now.
For building code?
For, yeah, that's correct. But,
Correct, and that's based on their revised application. It would be 149, because that is the occupant load for this entire building.
But they've only asked for 130, so
By revising their application, they're asking for 149.
can they answer that?
Sure.
'Cause I thought she said 130, I figured she had talked to you.
No.
So, the occupant load includes indoor and outdoor spaces. So the 148 that's requested would include both indoor spaces and outdoor spaces. I'm not aware of any regulations that would, require everybody to go inside at a certain time of night. But, again, they have taken measures to limit the outdoor noise by, removing noisy games, floor shoes, all that sort of stuff.
that, but the way the code comes up with that number is based on the square footage of the building. And that means you can have 149 or whatever it was on the premises. Is that right?
So we need to speak to that on planning approval, that the number is exterior and interior.
Well, planning approval, as it relates to the downtown development district, requires that you're looking at the inside and outside quantity of people. And the 130, well, the 130 occupant load that was depicted on their drawings addresses both the inside of the icebox bar as well as the play area. So then the additional occupants that would take it up to 149 would be for the golfing venue and then the office retail venue.
Mr. Chairman, if I may provide a comment?
Please.
Like our attorney said, I've been in there one time, and I think I was the second oldest person in there. It's a large space. I mean, we're losing a little bit of perspective of seeing something on a screen or on a drawing here. They could put 400 people in this building. It's a very large space. That if you've been outside and what they've got characterized as the play area, it's large. I mean, it's not, you're not tight and compacted in there. And I believe the drawing as it's depicted, only about a third of the building is actually currently opened up. It's currently being used. So I mean, it's a large space. I mean, 149 people can easily fit in there. I mean, it's just for those that may have not been in there, I think you needed to hear that perspective. Well, I understand that, but I think you have to look at some of the larger activities that the city's doing that's trying to encourage bicycle and pedestrian traffic. I think everybody in the whole greater downtown would probably like to see bicycle and pedestrians and less vehicles. And the Downtown Alliance president that spoke, I mean, she's exactly right. The things that they're trying to propose are things that bring slower traffic, more foot traffic, and then promotes more development. I mean, and so that seems like very much in line with exactly what these what this applicant's trying to accomplish here.
The reason for the increased occupancy load request is the development of that two-story space, which is designed to draw more patrons inside, out of the yard into the building.
All right, are there any further deliberations? If not, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, what was that, Counselor?
On these 1 through 9, do we put the number of occupants? It says requires new planning approval.
We will, it'll be attached to this application, so if he deviates, and planning approval, as you know, is specific. If there's a deviation from this plan that would increase this occupant load, it will have to come back before.
Speak to it in the conditions.
No, ma'am, because it's subject to this approval and these conditions. If
The
that,
applicant knows it's outside and inside. Yeah, okay.
yes.
Okay, great. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 2 was withdrawn, so we'll move on to number 3, 3703 Old Shell Road. Any of the commissioners have any deliberation points on this? All right, hearing none, I would accept a motion.
So
Move to
moved.
approve, subject to staff recommendation.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have number 4, 156, 158 South Jefferson Street, Lewis Place Home Subdivision. Do we have a motion or any discussion? Would entertain a motion.
Move to approve based on staff recommendation.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have Wildwood Glen subdivision, 1931 Wildwood Place. Is there any deliberation on this one? I think we had a deletion point on
Yeah,
this one.
removing number 9.
Okay, great. I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve based on staff recommendations, removing item number 9.
Properly moved and seconded. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And number 6, Henry Hamilton's 2339 Dolphin Island Parkway application, rezoning. Is there any deliberation on this point?
Question for staff. I mean, we've had a similar application like this come maybe a year or so ago in that same general area where you've had a business operating for decades in a residentially zoned area. I just want to get staff to speak to that.
There are a couple of things that are distinguishing on this one. It is, although there's a right-of-way, zoning goes to the center line of streets. This is an expansion of an existing B3 district. The existing dry cleaners, I do believe, or the previous dry cleaners, I do believe, also dry cleaned there. It was not simply a drop-off. That was a B3 use. So there is a history of B3 at the site. You do have across the street and down a little an existing B3 district as well. As Ms. Foster pointed out, though, on the other hand, the flume does show it as mixed commercial corridor. That does not necessarily dictate that it has to be B3. It could be B2 as well. You have, this is a unique area in terms of land use because you have directly behind it on that minor street, while still zoned residentially, storage buildings. So this is very much a transition area in terms of commercial, but you do have existing B3.
And by getting this zoned, obviously, it needs to be zoned a business zone. There's no, I don't think there's any question about that. But by getting it zoned into the business category, we can also get it into compliance with the current codes.
That can be a stipulation, yes, sir. You could require that it be fully compliant with parking, landscaping, tree plantings, that as well. Now, of course, setbacks, those, it's kind of, it's there. So, any setback issues along the side street, those would be considered non-conforming. As brought out in the staff report, Bert and I have worked recently on a couple of zoning letters in this area. When the current zoning ordinance and map that you're working off of now was adopted in 1967, the zoning map adopted was at a scale of 1 inch equals 2,000 feet. Needless to say, that doesn't exactly give you lot by lot specificity of zoning. And we found some in these areas that may indicate some error. Bert, I think the one we were dealing with earlier was further up here. And it's where, you know, how it's zoned doesn't match how it's used and how it was been used based on our research. I know on this particular site up here, it was developed in 67, 68, but the zoning map didn't appear to capture that. Not sure, but this site here has definitely been utilized commercially going back to the early 70s.
Okay.
All right, are there any further questions for staff? Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then they're gonna wanna advertise with their product right on the street, and they can't use the right of way, but they can put those cars right up there. It's not exactly a residential field by any means, and I think we owe it to that area to look at its future and not just a constant, it's always been, it was, it will be, and we have no choice. And recommend a B2 as the maximum, which would still give it, you know, a lot of potential, but not for a car sales and repair.
Thank you, ma'am.
I don't think it
Thank you, ma'am. I have a question for staff. The contemplated use that Mr. Hamilton included in his application, would B2 allow him to do those?
No. This application was presented to the Board of Zoning and Adjustment. The board looked at it and was like, this really is a question of zoning and not necessarily of hardship. And so they suggested that he pursue rezoning. And so that is why, hence this application. It will come back before the board at their meeting next month. If the rezoning, and just by virtue of math, it would not be heard by the council before heard by the board again. So I would foresee the board continuing it for another couple of months. And then depending on the outcome of the rezoning, he could still proceed with his variance request.
But if we take it up today and we decide whether it's a B2 or a B3, I mean, it's still going to city council.
That is correct.
For their final approval. We're just making recommendations. So, I hear what Ms. Rich has to say, and we want to protect the area. We don't want to prohibit people from having their businesses and being entrepreneurial and growing and contributing to our community, but we also want to protect our community at the same time with, doing it in a managed and profitable and productive way. So I think if we're going to do B3, that it needs to be, we need to put the conditions on it that would require it be brought to in compliance with our current codes.
Okay. If that becomes the motion, I would simply, just for clarity's sake, add full compliance with landscaping, tree planting, and parking and signage of the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for staff or other deliberations or comments? Okay, hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion.
Move to approve based on staff recommendations to the B3 classification with full compliance of current zoning requirements and codes, including tree planting, signage. What was the other, Margaret?
Landscaping and buffering.
And buffering requirements.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Is there no second? Motion fails due to lack of a second. Is there another motion?
Just for information, if you did a B2, he could still go to the Board of Adjustment to get a variance to do his intended use. So, I mean, as y'all obviously know, this one, there was a mistake in the zoning ordinance. The lady in opposition said none of the 4 requirements have been met. I disagree with her. There was a mistake in the zoning ordinance when it was adopted. It was used for B2 or B3 since 1960 something. So,
Right.
I mean, it needs to be rezoned.
Right, agreed. And it didn't matter to me whether we go B2 and let it stay at that, or go B3 and require the compliance. But if the commission prefers to have the B2, then I'm fine with that too.
Okay, thank you.
I would have
Doug.
liked to have heard if B2 fits his business plan. I mean, he left, so I just made a comment. I would have liked to have heard from the applicant if
Yeah.
B2 fits within his business plan.
Yeah, but he left.
Perspective, it would, from a zoning perspective, car sales, car repairs are prohibited in B2.
Okay.
The minimum zoning requirement is B3.
And he would have to go to Board of Adjustments to get the variance.
Yes, sir.
But I was reading in the report, they've already recommended it back to us because they didn't feel like it was in their wheelhouse for approval.
That's correct. They didn't feel, and if you look at it, And let's not take it from is this a B2 or a B3 site? From the Board of Zoning Adjustments perspective, when you look at the zoning, when you look at the site and when it was developed, it's not a matter of hardship. It was a matter of zoning.
Right.
So
And
what is
it's not a
before-
residential, it's not being used residentially.
That's correct.
Right.
So, their recommendation was that he pursue pursue the rezoning. So what's before this commission and will ultimately be before the city council is what classification. He applied for B3 because that's what he has to have to pursue his business here.
Question for the staff. When I look at the report, and again, assuming this, what in here is all correct, where they've listed the existing buildings or existing businesses, it looks like there's two businesses that are sales related to automobiles. Those are currently zoned B3, and there's two that are related to car repairs. Those are both currently B2. And so in his application, it says both. It says he's wanting to do car repairs and car sales. So I guess that's effectively what we're hearing. He can't do everything he would want, but he could do at least half of what he has proposed.
In terms of repair, and that gets sticky is the best way to put it. Your basic lube places where you just drive in, they change your oil, those are a B2 use. When you start doing repair, it gets questionable. When you're doing full-blown engine repair, things like that, that is a B3, and those become very hard to regulate.
And sales, where is sales allowed?
Sales requires B3.
B3.
All right, are there any further questions for staff? If not, the chair would entertain a motion.
If we make a recommendation for B2, again, that's got to go before the city council for approval, so I move to approve based on staff recommendations for a B2 classification.
Second.
With full compliance, yes, per the same wording we used earlier.
Great. It's been properly moved and seconded. If there's no other discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All in opposition? Motion carries. Finally, we have the Coca-Cola Mobile subdivision and PUD. We take the subdivision first. Is there any deliberation? If none, chair would entertain a motion.
Move to approve, subject to staff recommendation.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have the PUD. Chair would entertain a motion on this as well.
Move to approve, subject to staff recommendation, adopting findings of facts B, C, and D.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? All
BCD.
BCD.
B, C.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Is there any other business? The meeting is adjourned.